that being said, we're going to transition and get into our review this week of the Game of Thrones prequel series, House of the Dragon. We're going to talk about episode 2 of season 2, which just recently premiered, and we're recapping and recapturing just everything that went down. And last week we talked about, of course, the return of this show, the season premiere, and how much, we sort of enjoyed that and how much it created really a new dynamic entirely for what the season is going to focus on, a new level of violence, a new level of somewhat shocking material, to really set the stage for this impending war that is going to go down between Team Green and Team Black. And so before we dive into the specifics of this week's episode and talk about everything that went down, let's just start off with our high-level big picture thoughts. What did you think about this most recent episode of House of the Dragon?
I think thematically, this episode was amazing. It doesn't have some of the shocking moments that the first episode has, but it doesn't need that. I think it does a good job of getting us to to get into the psyche of the characters before the Dance of the Dragons goes down. I think this episode is tremendously important. I loved seeing both sides of Team Black and Team Green, and I just feel like we're headed in a really good direction that I think will pay off in so many big ways, man. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I think that the acting is still on point. Emma Darcy, every episode, I'm gonna keep saying this. This girl's coming for she's coming for the Emmy, man. She wants it, and I think she's coming to get it. But man, the performances are still really good. The themes are really good. I really didn't have too many quarrels with this episode, man. I think this is going to be another one of the ones that just propels us into a really cool future within this season.
I love this episode. Thought it was great. It's one of the longest episodes that they've given us. It was a whopping, I think, 72 minutes long, and so they had a lot to get to, a lot to address. But coming off of what happened in the season 2 premiere last week, I mean, I think a lot of people are still recovering from that. Like, yo, that was insane. And we obviously had a ton of questions in terms of how they were going to deal with that really, really traumatic event and how it was going to shape this war, this impending war that's about to happen between these kingdoms. And this episode did a really fantastic job, of course, at moving those pieces in play, but also still creating some really, really, I think, emotionally heavy television that speaks to a lot of what the characters are and who they are and what they're about, but also at the same time, just presenting us with a consistent rotating cast of characters who are as interesting as any character that you'll see on TV. This is still some of the best writing that I think is coming across any network, any streamer at this point. And it just reminds me of, what truly great television can look like. We got a great taste of it earlier this year with Shogun. And now that this has followed up Shogun, it's like we're in good hands with these people. We know that they're going to deliver really, really quality stuff, especially considering the source material is so strong and the performances are great. The moments are great. And just the entire discourse that it creates online with people afterwards. Like,
I love it.
That just proves that everything that they're doing is mostly working, that they're getting people talking in this way, because there's no other show that everybody rallies around to talk about in this way. That's how you know that they're doing something that's truly special. So I thought it was fantastic. Can't wait, obviously, to continue down this path. But with all of that out the way, let's dive into spoilers. Let's talk about all the details from this week's episode of House of the Dragon. So if you've not seen the latest episode, which is entitled Rhaenyra the Cruel, go watch that, come back, and finish out the rest of our conversation. So, of course, we have to start off with right where we pick up with this episode, and that's in the aftermath of the death of Aegon's son, and he's distraught. He is completely in pain. He's in distress. This is a truly traumatic experience because his son, Jaehaerys, has been beheaded by Blood and Cheese, which, again, just truly shocking shit that went down last week. But I think reasonably so. He's angry. He's pissed, and he wants answers immediately. So he's yelling. He's destroying stuff. He's barking orders, but kind of directionless at the same time because his head is really clouded with judgment. I don't think he has a great understanding of how to proceed because he is still a young king at the end of the day. All he sees is red. All he sees is vengeance. That's his only goal at this point. But ultimately, it's really Otto who kind of reels him back in and says, wait a second. Yes, this is tragic. Yes, this is just completely unbelievable in a lot of respects, but we have to figure out a way to use this. We have to figure out a way to take this and make it work for us. And so basically Otto comes up with a plan to essentially blame Rhaenyra for all of this, which I think we speculated about last week. There's no way that she knew that this was going to happen, but Otto takes this information and basically says, "Let's hold a public funeral for Jaehaerys. Let's take his body and put it out in front of King's Landing. Let the people
Mm-hmm.
see what's happened to the next heir of this kingdom." And when they do that, I mean, what the fuck? It's a horrific sight. They literally put the baby draped out on a carriage with his head stitched back on. I mean, it's a truly disturbing sight that you just can't look away from. But
Yeah.
it does exactly what Otto wanted. It incites so much outrage, and it effectively places all of the blame, all of the fallout on the situation towards Rhaenyra, and it basically weakens
Mm-hmm.
her position for the throne, because now people politically are looking at her like, this is what you would do. These are the lengths that you'll go. We can't support this. So, how did you feel about just those opening moments, seeing everything that, of course, Aegon was going through, just the truly traumatic anger that I think he was undergoing and experiencing, and then Otto taking that and trying to figure out a way in the midst of all of this to create his own plan to try to find a way through all of this madness.
I think Aegon was responding in such a normal way, right? Like it's just Aegon to me was like, of course you react that way, right? Your child, your son, who was just at the head of your table last episode, playing around and laughing, has just been beheaded. Of course you'd be angry. Of course you'd want to grieve, which we see him doing in this episode. We actually don't get a chance to see a lot of kings, whoever sit on that throne in King's Landing. We don't get to see a lot of them grieve. And I actually I liked Aegon here because we actually got to see a human side of one of the kings for once, instead of this stoic, I have to go on to the next thing, which is where Otto came in. And Otto covers himself so much. He says he does feel for his grandson, whom he has just lost. But like you said, it's time for some action. How do we do something about this? How do we use this energy to move along our agenda? And I think it was very smart for this public display kind of funeral for young Jaehaerys, because of course not only does this blame Rhaenyra, but it gets everybody in there closer to them. One of the biggest themes that we'll continue to talk about as the episode goes on, but it's about the small folk, right? The small folk make up who we are. The small folk are going to see that and be like, "Ooh, Rhaenyra did that. I don't know about her. We can't be having a child killer as a part of this." But if they can get the small folk even closer to them as a regime, close to Aegon as regime, and Ottawa as the hand as a regime, that will definitely benefit in their favor, man. It's very interesting. But Otto, I think he's so smart by doing that, and it definitely it's definitely gonna move some things down the line.
It's the political cunning that Otto has that, a younger king just wouldn't have at this time. The experience,
Mm-hmm.
the forethought, the calm to just say, like, let's take a second. Like, there's a way through this. Like, absolutely, this fucking sucks. It's terrible. What did they do? Like, this is the most atrocious act that's been committed thus far, I would say. But there is a way to position this so that we do benefit from it, which is not a wrong
Mm-hmm.
thing to do. This is what the hand of the king should be doing. And I find it just so interesting that in the beginning of this episode, Otto shows such a positive reinforcement of what it means to think under pressure, and
Mm-hmm.
what it's like to be in a position where you have to make very, very quick decisions that are going to they're going to determine the course of just everything in the immediate future. But by the end of this episode, when he confronts Aegon due to the rat catcher situation, it's almost like a lack of forethought, just considering how quickly he lost his position, just
Yeah.
considering how quickly he found himself on lower rungs of the ladder. And I do
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about that as well, because things seem fine once they're able to sort of shift the blame towards Rhaenyra. It works effectively, and word gets back to Dragonstone. But when we go back to King's Landing at the end of the episode and we see that Aegon, he's still not satisfied with what's went down. He basically
Mm-hmm.
finds all of the rat catchers within King's Landing because they can't pinpoint exactly who did it. They found, I believe it was blood that they found. And
I don't know which one's which.
and they made him talk, but they couldn't locate his partner in crime, and so Aegon's like, well, we'll just take them all out. We'll hang all of them. We'll do a public display so
Mm-hmm.
that everybody sees. Don't fuck with me. Don't fuck with my family. And this enrages Otto. He thinks that this is just the most rash decision. He's not thinking clearly. He just undid the goodwill that he actually established for them for them in this public procession. And because of this back and forth, it effectively makes Aegon say, "Well, Otto, you're not going to be my hand anymore. You're gonna lose this
Mm-hmm.
title, and I'm giving it to Kristen Cole. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give it to this guy." And so just quickly, we saw Aegon, I think, effectively, flexing his really high critical thinking muscles earlier in the episode, but then by the end of it, just because he can't see eye to eye with this king and he can't really get through to him, he's removed as the hand. And this is not the first time it's happened. He was removed in the first season, so
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just interesting that Otto sometimes doesn't really know how to approach certain situations. He's great in certain scenarios, but in other scenarios, he doesn't always have maybe necessarily the presence of mind to understand, like, well, you can
Mm-hmm.
still be ousted, you can still lose your position, and now you're going to be on the
Right.
outside looking in. How did you feel about just that whole exchange, the fact that everything went down in the way that it did?
It's kind of hard too from Otto's point of view because as a high tower dealing with all of these Targaryens who are they're just erratic people, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like all the Targaryen, you never know what's going to happen with them, and so it is. All you can do is your best sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Like Otto. What's funny was one of the funniest discourses I think I seen online was like that wouldn't have happened to Tywin. You know what I'm saying? Like Tywin would. I was like, I mean, you might be right, but
It wouldn't.
this,
Yeah, no, it wouldn't.
yeah, it's just so different. I think having to deal with these kind of people, and you're right, he didn't see it coming that he might get ousted, but also I don't know how, like, I'm pretty sure he was kind of sick of like being the hand to this kid at the same time. Like in watching him in his conversation with Allison, of course he was sad he wasn't the hand to the king anymore. He didn't want that to happen. But also it wasn't like the end of the world for him either. He was like, there are other things for him to do. So it was I think it's very interesting. By how his brains can only go so far. I think in this situation, it's definitely it was crazy to see, but he ain't out the game yet.
It probably wasn't the end of the world because he's lost it and gotten it back. And so he's
Mm-hmm.
probably thinking, well, I've already experienced the
Been
the
there, done
sharp
that.
pain of losing this, and I got it
Mm-hmm.
back. I kind of went through this, and so maybe I'll get it back again. I have that comfort knowing that there's a way to actually make that happen. But there's no real talking to Aegon, once this all goes down. I mean, he's
Yeah.
talking to Otto, and Otto's talking about dignity, and Aegon's like, fuck dignity. I want revenge. Period. That's it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no talking. And that's what I'm going to do. And so when a king who can effectively make any decision that he wants, when he's that headstrong, when he's that bloodthirsty, there's no real talking to him, regardless of like how informed you might be, how well
Yeah.
intentioned your moves are supposed to be. He doesn't care about any of that shit because he's the king at the end of the day. So really,
Mm-hmm.
in his mind, what does he have to lose except for the fact that people are going to look at him funny if he doesn't retaliate? And so that's his whole
Mm.
thing. Like, don't test me. Don't fucking ever cross me, because what we talked about last week, there's rats within the kingdom. This is happening from within.
Mm-hmm.
And by
Within the
this point, he
walls.
knows that. So they have to show, like, hey, if you think about turning against us, this is what's going to happen to you, and it's not necessarily right. It's not right by any stretch. Like, you're condemning innocent people who had nothing to do with it, but it
Mm-hmm.
was ultimately just to send a message to the rest of King's
Yeah.
Landing.
Mm-hmm.
To go on the other side of things, over to Dragonstone, once Rhaenyra hears this is obviously upsetting her because, again, this is not what she wanted. She obviously wanted Aemond Targaryen. She clearly
Mm-hmm.
made it. She made it very, very succinctly known to Daemon what she wants. And here we have a meeting between everybody, all the powers that be for Team Black. They're trying to figure out, like, well, what happened here? What went down? And I think somebody asked the question, like, who could have been responsible for something like this? And Damon's just like sitting in the corner, just kind of smirking, not really
Yes.
saying anything. And everybody slowly starts to turn their head, especially Rhaenyra, and she looks like, motherfucker, you did it, didn't you? That was you. And they proceed to have a
Mm.
big blow up between each other. They have a huge argument. I think that this might be one of the most well acted scenes in the series thus far between Emma Darcy and Matt Smith. They
Yeah.
they just go for it. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot comes out. A lot of old demons come up. A lot of old skeletons out of their closets come up. Hurt feelings get addressed in this conversation, and it results in Damon basically leaving, his wife, his niece's side, and leaving Dragonstone entirely, and sort of abandoning the cause, as we know it now. So how did you feel about just this whole scene, her reaction, the anger between the two, and just all of those old things that got brought back up to the surface?
Like you said, well acted, man. They do such a good job of, uh, I think, giving like breath to this scene, like when they're together. Like there's a perfect, and I'm getting into some really nerdy acting stuff, but there's a really good flow of up and down that eventually does lead to that anger. Like you said, all that old stuff starts to get bubbled up, and that's kind of what it's like. It's like it literally is bubbling up as they're talking. So man, there's just they're putting on such a master class of acting in this scene. I loved every bit of it. Rhaenyra, man, wow. I mean, you say one thing and Damon gives her another thing. And like it's so crazy just because she's going to get blamed for no matter what happens. You know, we talked about last episode. It's always like it's never Allison and Rhaenyra that are actually doing the fuck ups. It's all the men in between who keep fucking up over and over to get us to this point. And this is another huge example of that. You know, Damon fucked up, and now it's coming back on Rhaenyra tenfold. She got knights by her side. Like, I mean, I wouldn't surprise me if you decided to go get blood, you know what I'm saying, after the death of your child. Like, and that's real though. And so Rhaenyra, man, she has all the right, I think, to be not only angry because what she wanted still isn't happening, at least not accurately, not who she wanted. But she has the right to kind of be distracted too of everything that's happening. I mean, how could you, in your right mind, feel like as a queen that when you ask something to get done, it's not getting done? And so now she has to look at Damon like, I don't trust you no more. And to be honest, this has kind of also been bubbling up. There's plenty of times I probably shouldn't have trusted you, but now it's gone too far, and now a child has died because of, I think, the ways in which you go about things, the tactics that you take in order to get what I need done never work out, and so now Damon is her political blind spot. Damon has always kind of, I think, been the guy that's like, okay, I can oversee some of the things you do, but now I can't oversee this one. This one is absolutely too ridiculous. I can't do this anymore. And that's the conversation, man. It's all of this stuff that's kind of been happening that she's been letting go because she loves him. Now it's gone too far. We can't have that anymore.
And to speak from, I guess, Damon's POV, I think that this just represents a fundamental lack of respect that he has for Rhaenyra, because at the end of the day, Damon is still harboring some very hurt feelings about everything that happened between him and Viserys, and the
Yeah.
fact that he's not truly the heir to the throne. He was supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be, but he's not. He's not in the place that Rhaenyra is right now. He's not ascending to taking back the throne, the Iron Throne, and ascending to becoming the king of all of the realms, all of Westeros. You know, now he is working alongside this person that he does love, but I just don't think he respects her. You know, he still views her
Mm-hmm.
as a child in some respects. And he also knows that he's willing to go to places that she won't go to, at least not yet. He's
Mm-hmm.
willing to do some of the really just heinous, dastardly things that we've already seen him do that she's just not really capable of doing for herself, especially in the position of who she is as queen or as would be queen. And so I think that him undermining her and completely going against what she asked for just showcases the little respect that he has for her. That's just a
Yeah.
reinforcement of that idea. Like, okay, I hear you. I'll try to make that happen. But if I can't, somebody's still getting fucked up either way.
Yeah.
It's
He
gonna
said I
go
did my
down.
best.
I'm gonna do my best, and whoever gets the end of it, so be it. It is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not a way to move. You know, you mentioned the word erratic with the Targaryens. That is the
Mm-hmm.
erratic behavior that Daemon consistently exhibits. I mean, he is very intelligent, very smart, extremely resourceful, and knows how to slip in and out of situations. But all of the things that he does, they have just such massive repercussions. You know, they're
Mm-hmm.
so significant, and that's just like a consistent theme that runs through his bloodline. You know, their ability to think and to critically think and to try to plan for the next 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, and to think about how it's really just going to have these massive ramifications for everybody involved, and how it could really just turn the tide in this whole thing. And I think that that lack of trust and that lack of communication, even though they can kind of just say things to each other without really speaking, they have a shorthand because they know each other so well. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, when you don't really have that respect and that trust underneath all of that, it's kind of for nothing. You know, you can have a shorthand and you can just like give each other a look, but we see that it went sideways here. Like
Yeah.
the look was it was off. Like the look that she gave him was like he took that and he was like, I got a little bit of that, but I'm adding my own little spice on top of it. I got something extra for you as well, and that something extra was just some really really atrocious shit. We should talk about Kristen Cole, Sir Kristen Cole here, who's quickly become the most hated character on the show. I mean, it's not even close anymore.
It's not.
Sir Bitchness himself, Kristen Cole.
Ooh wee.
I mean, this guy. First of all, when they're trying to figure out like how did this happen, like where was everybody when this shit went down? Like where were you, Kristen Cole? You know, the protector of the King's Guard, the commander. Oh, I was abed. I was abed, bro. That's your. I was abed. You're damn right you were abed. You were
You
fucking
a bed.
banging it out with Allison, you know, and being distracted.
Mhm.
And because of his fuck up, you know, I think that he feels the need to overcompensate, and he comes up with this plan to basically use Auric, one of the twin brothers, to infiltrate Dragonstone and essentially kill Rhaenyra. Auric and Eric, you know, are the two twins. They're both members of their respective King's Guards, and this
Mhm.
plan would effectively just be him slipping in, portraying himself as his brother, and allowing himself to infiltrate the gates and ultimately take Rhaenyra out. Kristen just wants this to end quickly. We'll talk about the duel itself in a second because that's a big moment. How do you feel about just Kristen Cole's movements, man, and how he's just been operating this whole time, and even Allison also being a part of that as well? Because like Allison, I think she has to also walk away feeling guilt here, knowing that she was like fucking
Oh,
around
got
with this
to.
guy,
Yeah.
and she could have possibly been present to just be more aware of just the situation that was happening so that their family didn't go through this traumatic experience.
Man, this dude Kristen Cole. Oh my God. How could you like him? That's the other side of the question. How could anybody like this dude? He's again originally was made to be kind of a genius as a knight, right? Like he's supposed to have these really good plans. He's supposed to be a firefighter. And he doesn't show any of these things. He never really shows his geniusness. He never really shows how good of a fighter he is. He's just banging it out with Allison. And because of his absence in a child gets killed because of his absence. Like that is
Pretty much the worst thing that could possibly ever happen happens.
you had one job. Like that's literally what they pay you to do. To be honest, you literally have one job. And what's funny, in the opposite direction, they don't pay you at all to have sex. You're not supposed to be having sex, not even a little bit, like at
Mm-hmm.
all. And you're doing both. You're not protecting kids and you're having sex. This is crazy. Like what a debaucherous person. What an unserious night. How could you like this guy? And they end up giving him being insane. I just can't believe he's gotten to this point doing what he is doing, which has been absolutely nothing. So that part has been insane. Wait, what was the second part? What
No,
was you
that
talking
was
about?
that was really it. Just him. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I guess just like Allison's role in it too, because like
Oh yeah,
you
Allison.
know
Oh
she's not a
man.
Kingsguard member. She's not necessarily as responsible, but she does have to. I think she has to hold some of this accountability for why this happened.
You, of course. I mean, to put it quite plainly, pussy is power. That's always been it's a saying. That's real shit. Of course, there has to be a degree in her that always thought I should probably not. Of course, having sex is already bad, right? But how often they do this thing is kind of insane, bro. The severity, the consistency in which they're doing this thing is like you are taking this dude away from his job constantly when he could be doing some some other more important things, especially in the midst of one of the biggest wars potentially King's Landing has ever gone through up until this point that is brewing currently. He does not need to be this distracted. Again, maybe if they did it less, this wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? Doing is already one thing, but maybe do it less. And so, of course, she's also partially to blame, and she knows it too. But it's self indulgence. It's about getting what she wants as well, more than it is about love with Kristen Cole. It's like, no, you give me something I can get from nobody else right now. So I'm gonna go get it, and I'm gonna continue to get it until I can't anymore. And yes, Allison, you are also partially to blame for that.
What an asshole. He's really fucking up big time. Like this guy,
What?
I need the performance review to come up. Like we gotta have the mid year immediately.
Got
Like
to,
we
yeah.
gotta assess this immediately and nip this in the bud
Does
because
not meet expectations.
it's not happening, bro. You're not meeting expectations. Like you were falling well below them. If we're being quite honest, like this is the worst shit that could have happened. You're a Lakers fan, so I know you get this reference. Did you see the meme online where somebody said Kristen Cole's resume and they put a picture of JJ Redick up and the fact that like
oh my god,
JJ Redick has now become
Why is he the coach?
He's the Lakers head coach.
Oh my god,
after being a fourth grade basketball volunteer coach. That's his prior experience.
And a podcaster.
And now all of a sudden you were leading one of the most prestigious franchises in all of sports. Good luck to you, JJ Redick.
Oh my god,
that's basically Kristen Cole summed up. Like this guy has been. But he did show a lot of promise, to everything you said. Like he did exhibit a lot of qualities that would make him seem like a guy that was fit, but he goes through this whole situation. He clearly was inept and fell well below what was expected of him, even though nobody really knows it because he's secretly sleeping with Allison behind everybody's backs. And then on top of that, gets another promotion. He gets rewarded. He gets made hand of the king. That's exactly what the fuck happens in real life. It's like, oh yeah, this guy, I got something for you. He's gonna be my hand. Why not? Why not Kristen Cole? Which he himself is surprised in that moment when it happens. He's like, sir, I don't know about that one. And I think he's terrified because now there's gonna be even more of a light on him. There's gonna be even more of a spotlight to his actions that he's doing with Allison, behind the scenes. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how they move and how they maneuver because he has to be reconsidering. He knows that this is weighing on his conscience, and now he's going to be hand to the king on top of all of this happening. Let's see how that goes. Let's see how that works out for them. I guess like other quick things to mention, I do want to just quickly point out, we don't see a ton of them, but Aemon Targaryen this week, he's like real sad and distraught just about, being responsible for, for killing Lucerys last season, which, is really kind of what kicked a lot of this off in terms of these recent events. But he's like cuddling up with this woman at this brothel. This man is like all skin and bones. I saw so many.
He's so small.
I saw so many Voldemort memes online, but not fully grown Voldemort when Voldemort was like an embryo damn near still. Yeah. It was pretty funny to see him that way. But any thoughts on just like Aemon and what he's going through, knowing that, you are kind of responsible for why a lot of this stuff is, kicked off this new chain of events.
Yeah, there's actually a couple interesting things in that scene. As small as it is, again, it reiterates a couple things. One, that like he was angry in that moment and all these things, but also, of course, he says it was an accident. But if you remember, it was like high key, it was the dragon's fault. Like the dragon, he couldn't control the dragon.
Yeah, he couldn't do nothing about that one.
And that's like what do you do about that? Of course, you would feel bad. Of course, he wasn't trying to kill his family member for real. You know what I'm saying? He's been kind of like all talk up until that point. Of course, he feels some type of way because he used to get made fun of, but it's still like, of course you would feel bad. But what's funny, the lady, again, what's interesting in this whole thing is she saying when a prince gets angry, it's the small people who pay. And then, but he has no reaction on his face. I'm like, did you hear what she just said at all?
One ear and out the other. It didn't mean shit to him.
Did you okay, but bro, that's such an important theme what she said right there though, and it's so simple, but the way the show displays it makes it a completely different thing, right? And the wealthy not caring about the poor, or a princess not caring about the pawns, or the king and queen not caring about them. That's not like an earth-shattering, groundbreaking idea, but it's so important again in the way everything is moving, and why we get Ark versus Eric, and why everything is going down the way it's going down. It was such a subtle way to say, no, this is a very important part of the show. So I actually thought it was a cool scene.
Yeah, Aemon. I just really can't get over him just curling up like a fetus, just sort of confessing.
Bro, he really curled up.
All of his. He's feeling really distraught about this whole thing, which I guess I can respect. But
on his challengers,
it's probably not going.
You still love me.
Yeah, it cannot last long though. The man is still he's still pretty untamed and sociopathic in a lot of respects.
Thanks.
Another quick thing I just want to point out. Allison tries to confess to Otto about this whole thing that's going on with her and Cole, and Otto's just like, I don't want to hear nothing about it. Don't tell
Oh,
me.
yeah.
I'm just like, hey,
Plausible deniability.
don't
Nope.
tell me a fucking
Nope.
thing. And honestly, I respect it. I really,
I
really respect
respect
it.
it a
I'm like,
lot.
man, you know what? The less you know is sometimes the better, because the more information that you get in this universe, it tends to work against you. I don't know if you felt the
Hmm.
same way, but that particular moment made me really, really laugh hearing that, especially considering it was after he was already demoted and removed his hand of the king.
Hmm.
He's like, you know what? I don't need this. You ain't got to tell me shit, because it ain't gonna do nothing but make matters worse.
Yeah, she said, I have sinned. He said, and you better go to church. You better take that up with the priest or
You
something. He
deal
said,
with that. That's on
I'm not the
you.
one. I'm not the one. Now is not the moment.
Mm-mm.
2, I don't want to hear about it. 3, I've heard enough about all your other sins that I'm good. He said, I'm good. We're not doing this today. I understand you, Otto. I'm with you. I'm with you, brother.
It was pretty hilarious. Last big thing that we should talk about is that final duel between the twins, Arik and Eric. So Arik, who's sent by Cole, does eventually get into Dragonstone. He infiltrates Rhaenyra's quarters, and he's nearly about to kill her. But that's when Eric comes in and he confronts and intercepts his brother, and they have a big, big duel between each other. And ultimately, Eric, the one who is actually protecting Rhaenyra, slays his brother Arik, who was sent by Cole, and then ultimately, I suppose out of shame, for not being able to fulfill his own obligations, he kills himself right in front of Rhaenyra, and it's a really, really emotional moment. It packs a huge punch. The fight itself was really, really brutal between the two, and these two being brothers, who we've seen, sort of showcase love between these two, like there is an affection. They do their duty. They fight each other in terms of what it means. They follow orders. They protect who they're supposed to protect, and it costs both of them their lives at the end of it. Any thoughts on just like that duel and seeing them two show down at the end of the episode like that?
Yeah, again, I thought that was one of the core themes of the show is you have these two brothers who love each other very so dearly, fighting over their political differences. And it's not because they chose to fight or they really wanted to fight each other. It's the powers that be, the people on top of them who led them astray, who led them this way. Is what I meant by this is when who cares if the pawns fight the pawns? You know what I mean? This is really to me what the show is about. It wasn't fair to them that they had to fight in such a way, but because of that, you could see you just in their motions, it was like both love and not wanting to fight each other all at the same time of the way the fight went down. I thought it was a very good scene, and I thought it was so important. But man, it was very good staging too. At the end of the day, I thought it was a great scene, a great fight, and again another one of those dominoes, man, that's going to set up some other shit down the line. I thought it was very well done.
Yeah, I believe the actor said that they rehearsed this for like 28 days or something ridiculous. Like they put a lot of work into getting this right, which is that's a crazy amount of work, but it pays off. It's a
Mm-hmm.
tremendous fight. It looks gorgeous. It's well staged, as you said. The emotion and the stakes are really, really high. You feel the threat, that Rhaenyra might
Yeah,
might might succumb to, this attack here, but ultimately there is just that push and pull, the reluctance, but also the obligation to fulfill their duty and being pawns
exactly.
in this whole thing, and just, sort of carrying out their orders and their actions, just fulfilling and living up to the name of who they're supposed to be, these protectors, these
Mm-hmm.
knights, doing a much better job than Kristen Cole is. He would never, that nigga
He would
would
never.
never,
He wouldn't have been there.
he don't got the
Mm-mm.
cojones to do something like that. But these two, man, it was an exceptional scene. I just loved it. It was probably my favorite part of the episode outside of the interaction earlier between Rhaenyra and Damon.
Same.
As we wrap up here, any other things you want to point out before we move on? I know there was big movement with Masseria. She was able to get out of
Mm-hmm.
Dragonstone. She basically kind of struck up a short truce between her and Rhaenyra, and get out of there. Also Laris, he was still making movements and basically, was a part of trying to get information out of Blood and Cheese and figure out where the rats across King's Landing were. But there were other things that happened. But just want to open it up if there were any other like smaller things that happened throughout the course of the episode that you wanted to point out.
I just want us to keep paying attention to the kids. Anytime I see Bayla, I think it's really cool, man. She's a black girl on a dragon. I think that's the coolest thing ever. But yeah, I just want us to keep paying attention to the kids. I think they kind of been slightly sidelined, like the Rhaenyra's kids in particular, Rhaenyra and Damon's kids in particular, kind of been slightly sidelined, kind of doing their own thing. But I think they're going to come up in a big way. She has, Bayla on Moon Dancer patrolling and other things going down. So yeah, that's it. I just want us to keep paying attention to them. I think they're about to show up.
No doubt about it. Well, folks, those are all of our thoughts on the latest episode of House of the Dragon. If you've checked out episode 2 of season 2, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.